Steve Jobs was a very famous man who changed the world. He was the founder of Apple, a company that makes computers, phones, and many other devices that people use every day. Steve was born on February 24, 1955 in San Francisco, California. His full name was Stephen Paul Jobs, but he is mostly known as Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs did not have an easy life at first. He was adopted when he was just a baby. His biological parents were young students, and they could not take care of him. A couple named Clara and Paul Jobs adopted Steve and raised him in a small town called Mountain View in California. His adoptive parents loved him very much, and they provided a home full of support. Paul Jobs, his father, worked as a mechanic and loved to fix things around the house, teaching Steve how things worked from a very young age. Steve was a curious child. He loved to ask questions about how things worked. He liked to take things apart to see what was inside. His father, Paul, taught him how to work with tools and build things. Steve also loved to read and learn new things. However, his early years at school were not easy. He didn't fit in well at first, and his teachers didn't always understand him. He often got in trouble for asking too many questions or for not following rules in a traditional way. Despite this, Steve was very intelligent, and he found joy in learning things outside of school. As a teenager, he would often visit the nearby Hewlett-Packard Company, where he would talk to engineers and learn about electronics. It was at HP that he met a boy named Steve Wozniak, who would later become his best friend and business partner. In high school, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak formed a close friendship. Wozniak was a brilliant engineer, and he loved to build and design computers. Jobs was more focused on the business side of things, and together they dreamed of creating their own company. After high school, Steve Jobs went to Reed College in Oregon, but he didn't stay long. He didn't find the traditional college education very interesting, so he dropped out after just one semester. He was not one to follow the usual path. Instead, he decided to travel and follow his passion for technology. He even spent time studying calligraphy, the art of beautiful writing, which later influenced the design of Apple's fonts. In 1976, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak started a small company called Apple in Steve's parents' garage. They wanted to make computers that were easy to use, unlike the ones that were available at the time, which were often complicated and expensive. Their first product was the Apple I, a simple circuit board that people could buy and build into a full computer. It was the beginning of something special. At first, Apple was a very small company. Jobs and Wozniak worked hard to get their product into stores. They sold the Apple I to a few local computer shops, and soon they started getting attention. This led to the creation of the Apple II, a more advanced version that was released in 1977. The Apple II was the first personal computer to gain widespread success. It was easy to use, affordable, and powerful for its time. It helped launch the personal computer revolution. The success of the Apple II allowed the company to grow quickly. As Apple expanded, Steve Jobs became the face of the company. His ability to inspire others with his vision and passion for innovation was one of the reasons behind Apple's success. He believed that technology should be easy to use, beautiful, and make people's lives better. In 1984, Apple released the Macintosh, a computer that would change the industry. The Macintosh was the first personal computer to use a graphical user interface (GUI). This meant that instead of typing commands into a computer, users could click on icons and buttons on the screen to open files and programs. This was a revolutionary idea because, before that, computers were controlled by text commands only. The Macintosh was also smaller and more affordable than other computers on the market. The launch of the Macintosh was a big moment for Apple. Steve Jobs was proud of the computer and believed it was a game changer. However, not everyone agreed. While the Macintosh was ahead of its time in many ways, it faced criticism for being too expensive and too different from other computers. This led to some early struggles for Apple. As Apple grew, Steve Jobs' leadership style became more demanding. He was a perfectionist and wanted everything to be perfect. However, this sometimes caused problems with his colleagues and the people who worked at Apple. He had a vision for Apple's future, but not everyone agreed with him. In 1985, after a series of disagreements with Apple's board of directors, Steve Jobs was forced to leave the company he had founded. Leaving Apple was a hard moment for Jobs. However, he did not give up. Instead, he used the time away from Apple to explore new opportunities. He started a new company called Next, which made high-end computers for universities and businesses. Although Next didn't become a big success, it allowed Jobs to experiment with new ideas and technologies. During this time, Jobs also bought a small animation company called Pixar. Pixar would later become famous for creating some of the most popular animated films in history, including Toy Story, Finding Nemo, and The Incredibles. Pixar's success made Steve Jobs very wealthy, but his love for innovation and technology never stopped. In 1996, Apple was in trouble. The company had lost its way and was struggling to keep up with its competitors. Many people thought Apple might go out of business. At that time, Apple decided to buy Next, the company Steve Jobs had founded. When Steve Jobs returned to Apple in 1997, he was determined to turn things around. Jobs immediately made changes at Apple. He focused on making products that were not only functional, but also beautiful and easy to use. One of his first successes was the iMac, a colorful and stylish computer that was completely different from anything Apple had made before. The iMac was a big success and helped Apple return to profitability. Jobs also introduced a simpler, more focused approach to the company's product lineup. He cut many of the products that were not doing well and concentrated on creating a few high-quality products. In 2001, Steve Jobs introduced the iPod, a small device that allowed people to carry thousands of songs in their pockets. The iPod revolutionized the music industry and changed the way people listened to music. It was easy to use and had a sleek design, which made it very popular. The iPod was just the beginning of Apple's success under Jobs' leadership. In 2007, Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone, a revolutionary new device that combined a phone, a computer, and an iPod into one. The iPhone had a touch screen, which was a huge breakthrough at the time. It was the first phone that allowed users to easily interact with apps, browse the internet, and send messages with just their fingers. The iPhone became an instant success and changed the smartphone industry forever. A few years later, in 2010, Jobs introduced the iPad, a tablet device that was perfect for watching videos, reading books, and surfing the internet. The iPad was another huge success for Apple, and it further established the company as the leader in technology innovation. Steve Jobs was known for his strong leadership and his ability to inspire others. He had a vision of what technology should be, and he worked tirelessly to make that vision a reality. He was often very demanding, but people who worked with him admired his ability to push them to do their best work. Jobs was not afraid to make difficult decisions, and he was always focused on the long-term goals of Apple. He believed that technology should not just be functional but also beautiful. He was involved in every detail of Apple's products, from the design of the hardware to the user interface. Jobs cared deeply about the experience people had when using Apple products, and this commitment to excellence helped Apple create some of the most beloved products in history. In 2011, Steve Jobs passed away after a long battle with cancer. His death was a huge loss to the world. However, his legacy continues to live on in the products he created and the company he built. Apple is now one of the most valuable companies in the world, and millions of people use Apple products every day. Jobs' vision for technology, design, and innovation has influenced not just Apple but the entire tech industry. Steve Jobs taught us that it is important to follow our passion and to believe in ourselves, even when things get tough. He showed us that we can change the world by thinking differently and doing things in new ways. Steve Jobs' life and work continue to inspire people around the world to create, innovate, and push the boundaries of what is possible. Steve Jobs was a visionary leader who changed the world with his ideas, products, and determination. Through his work with Apple and Pixar, he reshaped the technology and entertainment industries, making products that were not only functional but also beautiful and user-friendly. His legacy lives on today in the devices millions of people use every day, and in the millions of people who continue to be inspired by his story. Steve Jobs' life shows us that with passion, hard work, and a willingness to think differently, anything is possible.